The castle on the hill. We found our way to a wide stone-cobbled path that led all the way to the gates of the castle on the hill. The stones, smoothed by centuries of footsteps, gleamed under the soft pearlescent light of a sky streaked with hues of lavender and gold. Each cobble seemed to hum with the memory of travelers who had walked this path before, their edges softened like the pages of an ancient book. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of wild thyme and distant wood smoke, and the castle loomed ahead, its spires piercing the clouds like the jagged teeth of a benevolent giant. It looked magical, like a fairy tale spun from starlight and dreams, its walls glowing faintly, as if infused with the essence of moonlight. As we approached, I could see crowds of people standing outside the gates in silence, their faces a tapestry of anticipation and reverence, their breath visible in the cool air like delicate wisps of mist. The ramparts, too, were crammed with figures, their silhouettes sharp against the fading light, cloaks fluttering like the wings of perched ravens. The castle's iron gates, intricately wrought with vines and mythical beasts, stood tall and unyielding, their surfaces catching the last rays of the sun in glints of burnished bronze. I began to feel uneasy, a knot tightening in my stomach, when a voice rang out from the ramparts, clear and resonant as a bell tolling through a quiet valley. "Here they come," it proclaimed, slicing through the stillness like a blade. The crowd at the gate erupted, their cheers a wild, rolling wave that crashed over us, vibrant and uncontainable. The people on the ramparts joined in, their voices soaring as they waved flags of all colors, crimson, emerald, sapphire, and gold, through the air, the fabric snapping like sails in a storm. The banners danced in the breeze, their edges frayed but proud, embroidered with symbols of ancient victories and forgotten legends. A band struck up, the music a lively cascade of flutes, drums, and lyres that wove through the air like threads of molten gold. Ogleflow, his eyes alight with mischief, performed his little dance, his feet tapping a rhythm only he could hear, his multicolored cloak swirling like a kaleidoscope. We moved forward, carried by the tide of sound and celebration. I turned to look behind us, expecting to see who they were cheering for, my heart pounding with curiosity. But the path was clear, the cobbles stretching empty into the distance, shimmering faintly as if dusted with starlight. A flicker of confusion stirred within me. I asked Ogleflow, "Is this for us?" My voice was barely audible over the roar of the crowd. "Who else, young fun?" he replied, his grin wide and knowing, his eyes glinting like polished obsidian. "This is more like it. This is what I came here for," I said, a spark of excitement igniting in my chest, chasing away the unease. I started to bob along with the music as we reached the gates, the air thick with the electric pulse of excitement, the scent of crushed petals and warm bread mingling with the crisp bite of autumn. The gates loomed larger now, their iron vines seeming to writhe subtly, as if alive, welcoming us into the heart of the castle. Soldiers lined the path, at least 15 on each side, their armor polished to a mirror-like sheen, reflecting the vibrant chaos of the crowd. Their faces were stern but not unkind, their eyes tracking our every step. The crowd showered us with flowers, roses, lilies, and star-shaped blossoms that rained down like fragrant snow, their petals soft against my skin as they danced and sang. It was a carnival, a whirlwind of color and sound, the air alive with laughter and the clink of goblets raised in our honor. The band turned and led the way through the gates, their instruments gleaming under the torchlight, the notes spiraling upward like sparks from a bonfire. We followed close behind, the soldiers in their shiny armor marching alongside us, their boots striking the cobbles in perfect unison, a steady heartbeat beneath the revelry. The streets beyond the gates were lined with cheering crowds, their faces radiant with joy, their hands tossing flowers from every window and every balcony. The petals drifted down in a fragrant cascade, catching in my hair and dusting the ground like a carpet woven from dreams. I had no idea why they were so happy to see us. The thought flickered through my mind, fleeting but persistent, like a shadow at the edge of a sunlit meadow. I just thought I must have created this from my positive thoughts, conjuring this moment from the well of my own hope, as if my mind had painted this vibrant scene, stroke by stroke. Ogleflow was having a good time dancing along with the band, his movements fluid and joyous, his cloak a blur of color that seemed to shift with every step. But then he always did enjoy the journey, his spirit as untamed as the wind. It was I who had the hard times, my heart often heavy with doubt and fear. But not this time. This time, I'm going to have fun too, I promised myself, letting the music lift me like a tide. Walking through the streets of this fairy tale castle was like stepping into a living dream woven from centuries of enchantment. The cobbled streets curved gently beneath our feet, their smooth stones warmed by golden sunlight filtering through the soft glow of floating lanterns that hovered like fireflies frozen in time. Ivy climbed the pastel-colored walls of storybook houses, their tendrils curling like delicate fingers, as if the buildings themselves were alive and reaching out to greet us. Windows framed with flower boxes overflowed with vibrant blooms, crimson roses, violet pansies, and golden marigolds that spilled into the air with a sweet, heady perfume of honeysuckle, lavender, and something intangible, a little like magic itself. Every building seemed to lean in just slightly, their eaves casting soft shadows that whispered old secrets to one another in the breeze. Tall, whimsical towers spiraled upward into the sky, their tiled domes shimmering in hues of sapphire and rose gold, catching the light like the scales of a sleeping dragon. Banners and pennants fluttered from every rooftop, embroidered with symbols of mythical beasts, griffins, phoenixes, and unicorns, and ancient lineages whose stories were etched into the very stones of the castle. In the distance, the castle itself rose like a crown carved from starlight, its grand archways open and inviting, framed by statues of winged guardians whose marble eyes seemed to follow our progress. Its towers, slender and graceful, shifted ever so slightly when you weren't looking directly at them, as if they were alive, aware, and playing a subtle game with your gaze. And somehow you felt it. This place was alive, not just with people and sound, but with purpose, history, and an undercurrent of wonder that hummed beneath every step, a heartbeat woven into the fabric of the earth itself. We danced all the way up to the castle keep, the music swelling around us like a river, and stood before two large doors, their surfaces carved with intricate scenes of battles and feasts, the wood dark, polished to a glassy sheen. The band moved off to the side, their instruments falling silent, and the soldiers stopped marching, their armor clinking softly as they took their positions. The air grew heavy with expectation, the crowd's cheers fading into a reverent hush. The doors swung open, silent despite their size, revealing the royal hall beyond. It was a sight to see, bathed in a golden light that streamed through towering stained-glass windows, their panels alive with vivid scenes of heroes and gods. The light painted the polished marble floor in a mosaic of ruby, sapphire, and emerald, the colors shifting subtly as clouds passed overhead. The hall was vast, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadows, supported by columns carved to resemble ancient trees, their stone branches intertwining overhead like a forest frozen in time. A hush fell over the chamber, the air thick with anticipation, as we approached the thrones. My heart thudded in my chest, a wild rhythm that drowned out the faint rustle of my footsteps. I was nervous. I had never met a king or a queen before, and the weight of their presence pressed against me like a physical force. The king rose first, towering and regal, his noble bearing radiating warmth but commanding respect. His presence filled the room, as if the very air bent to his will. He wore a robe of deep indigo velvet, its hem sweeping the floor, embroidered with threads of gold that formed ancient runes and roaring lions, their eyes glinting with tiny inset gems. A cloak trimmed in white ermine flowed behind him, its edges whispering against the marble, and at his shoulders golden pauldrons, shaped like curling dragon wings, shimmered faintly, catching the light with every movement. His crown looked heavy, ancient, crafted from twisted bronze and inlaid with sapphires that burned with the deep, endless blue of a twilight sky, matching the piercing clarity of his eyes. His beard was neat, silver with streaks of raven black, framing a face both stern and kind, etched with the wisdom of countless years. He was everything I imagined a king would be, majestic, unyielding, yet somehow human, Beside him, his queen, beautiful and graceful, seemed to glide forward like moonlight on water, her presence serene yet powerful. Her gown was a marvel, woven from silk so fine it appeared to float around her, shifting in hue between soft lilac and moonlit pearl as she moved, as if the fabric itself were alive. Hundreds of tiny hand-sewn crystals adorned it, catching the light like stars scattered across a night sky, their facets casting fleeting rainbows across the floor. Her hair, a waterfall of dark gold, was intricately braided with silver vines and crowned with a delicate tiara shaped like a crescent moon entwined with roses, its petals forged from pale gold and dusted with diamond dust. Her eyes, piercing and wise, the color of storm clouds before rain, saw everything, peeling back layers of my soul with a single glance. Her presence was a quiet storm, serene yet unyielding, a beacon of grace in the heart of the hall. Together they were a living legend. The heart of the kingdom, ancient and eternal, a perfect balance of strength and gentleness. When they smiled at you, it was like stepping into a warm hearth after a winter storm, safe, welcome, and utterly magical, their warmth wrapping around you like a cloak woven from trust. The king spoke first, his voice deep and resonant, echoing slightly in the vaulted chamber, each word carrying the weight of authority tempered by kindness. "Welcome, young traveler. We have been waiting for you," he said, his tone both a proclamation and an invitation. The queen followed, her voice soft as silk and as clear as a crystal chime, each syllable ringing with a melody that seemed to linger in the air. "You carry the light of dreams within you. It shines brighter than most," she said, her words wrapping around me like a gentle breeze, stirring something deep within my heart. She stepped down from the dais, her gown trailing behind her like a river of starlight, and offered me her hand, not out of formality, but friendship, her fingers warm and steady. The court murmured with approval, a soft ripple of voices like leaves stirred by the wind as I took her hand, my own trembling slightly. I looked at Ogleflow in complete surprise, my eyes wide, and mouthed the words, "What's happening here?" My voice was lost in the grandeur of the moment. He just smiled from ear to ear, his eyes twinkling with secrets, his multicolored cloak catching the light in a cascade of hues. "Tonight," the king said, his voice rising like a tide, "you dine at our table." "Tomorrow," the queen added, with a smile that held both promise and mystery, "your story begins anew." The king nodded to a man who stood in silence, off to his right, clad in robes of deep crimson, his face half hidden in the shadow of a hooded cloak. The man clapped his hands, the sound sharp and commanding, and four maidens appeared from nowhere, their movements swift and graceful, like deer stepping through a forest glade. They took hold of me, their hands gentle but insistent, guiding me quickly towards a door off to the side of the royal hall, its frame carved with delicate vines that seemed to pulse faintly with life. Once again, I was being forced to go somewhere, but strangely this time I didn't mind so much. The maidens' laughter was light, like the tinkling of silver bells, and their eyes sparkled with mischief as they led me forward. I kept looking back at Ogleflow as the beautiful maidens pulled me by my arms up a spiral staircase, its steps worn smooth by countless feet, the stone cool beneath my boots. He was laughing, his shoulders shaking with mirth, but I wasn't sure how to react. I had never been in a situation like this before. Kings and queens, beautiful maidens, everyone cheering for us like heroes. What did it all mean? My mind spun, caught between wonder and suspicion, like a leaf twirling in a stream. Don't misunderstand me, I craved attention. My life was dull and lonely, a grey tapestry of routine and solitude. It's just that this seemed a little too much, like an over-decorated cake. Its sweetness overwhelming, hiding something beneath the layers of frosting. I was feeling exhausted when we finally reached the top of the stairs, my legs heavy, my breath coming in short gasps. The maidens pushed open a large door, its hinges silent despite its weight, and pulled me through into a bedchamber that was a sanctuary of opulence and serenity, perched high within one of the castle's tallest towers. The room seemed to float above the world, offering panoramic views of the moonlit valley below, where rivers gleamed like silver threads and distant hills slumbered under a blanket of stars. As I stepped inside, the scent of jasmine and aged wood greeted me, subtle, soothing, like the remnants of a lullaby sung by the wind. The floor was polished stone, its surface warm beneath my feet, softened by lush hand-woven rugs in shades of plum, emerald, and midnight blue, their patterns swirling like galaxies. Tapestries lined the walls, each a masterpiece depicting mythical tales. Phoenixes rising from ash in bursts of crimson and gold, starlit forests where shadows danced, and oceans that seemed to shimmer as I passed, their woven waves rippling faintly. The air was alive with a quiet magic, a hum that resonated in my bones. At the center rested a grand canopy bed, elevated on a marble dais, its posts carved into twisting vines that climbed toward the ceiling, crowned with golden leafwork that gleamed in the firelight. Gossamer curtains hung from the canopy, translucent and trailing like mist, catching the light of a crackling hearth whose flames danced with hues of amber and violet. The bed itself was vast, layered with velvet quilts in deep jewel tones, silk sheets that whispered against the skin, and cushions that invited you to sink into dreams as soft as clouds. Beside the bed stood a delicate writing desk, its surface inlaid with mother-of-pearl, holding scrolls bound in leather, quills with feathers that shimmered faintly, and crystal vials of ink that glowed with a soft inner light. A silver-framed mirror above the vanity reflected not only my image, but a whisper of my aura. Soft hues of blue and gold flickering in sync with my breath, as if the mirror saw more than my reflection. Moonlight spilled through arched windows framed by ivy-covered stone, casting intricate shadows across the floor, and just outside I heard the faint hoot of an owl and the sigh of leaves in the wind, a gentle lullaby from the world beyond. I was in awe, my senses overwhelmed by the beauty of the room. I wanted to touch everything, smell everything, to lose myself in the textures and scents, but before I got a chance, the maidens guided me through an arched doorway and into a private bath chamber, an ethereal oasis tucked into the tower's embrace. The room was softly lit by glowing crystal sconces, their light shimmering across marble walls veined with rose gold, the veins pulsing faintly like the heartbeat of the castle itself. In the center, a sunken bath carved from pale amethyst glowed from within, its surface steaming in lazy spirals like morning fog over a still lake, the water catching the light in prisms of violet and silver. Suddenly, the four beautiful maidens started pulling at my clothes, their giggles bright and infectious like the chime of wind chimes in a summer breeze. I tried to fight them off, my cheeks burning with embarrassment, but I was outnumbered 4-1, and very quickly I found myself standing naked, my face so red I thought it would explode with heat. My hands flew to cover myself, my heart racing as I stood exposed in the glowing light of the bath chamber. I could hear Ogleflow in the bedchamber, his laughter rolling like thunder. I looked through the doorway and saw him sitting on the edge of the bed, holding his stomach as he rocked back and forth, unable to stop, his cloak a riot of color against the muted tones of the room. I was too embarrassed to be mad at him, but I wished just one time he wouldn't laugh at my predicaments. The sting of humiliation warred with the warmth of the moment, leaving me caught between indignation and reluctant amusement. One of the maidens took hold of me by the elbow, her touch gentle but firm, as I kept my hands cupped over my private parts and guided me to the steps that led down into the bath. The water was infused with flower petals, lavender, lotus, and bluebell, each exuding a delicate fragrance that curled around me like a warm embrace. The bath was enchanted, adjusting to my preferred warmth, its silken touch soothing every ache and tension, carrying the faint hum of a lullaby that seemed to rise from the water itself. On one side rested a curved chaise draped in plush towels, beside which sat jars of glittering bath salts, oils in jeweled flasks that shimmered like liquid starlight, and a comb carved from pearl, its surface smooth and cool. A stained glass window, etched with stars and moons, filtered moonlight into a kaleidoscope across the polished stone floor, the colors dancing like spirits in a quiet ritual. The ambiance was still, sacred and timeless, a sanctuary where time itself seemed to pause. A maiden stood at each corner of the bath in complete silence, towel in hand, their faces serene as I moved through the water, the petals brushing against my skin like soft kisses. This was more than just a bath. I felt relaxed, soothed, cradled by the soft, silky water as if the castle itself were caring for me, loving me. It was heaven, a moment of pure peace that wrapped around my heart. I could have remained there for all eternity and been completely happy, the world beyond fading into a distant memory. I looked up to see Ogleflow standing in the doorway, arms folded as he leaned against the frame, his silhouette framed by the warm glow of the bedchamber. His eyes twinkled with amusement, but there was a softness there too, a quiet pride. "Hurry up, young fun, we have a feast to attend," he said, before retreating back into the bedchamber, his coat trailing behind him like a comet's tail. One of the maidens stood at the edge of the bath, holding out a robe of soft ivory linen that shimmered faintly in the light. I walked up the steps and out of the bath, the water clinging to my skin like a lover's touch. The young maiden helped me on with the robe, her movements deft and practiced. Then all four of them left, giggling and laughing as they went, their voices fading like echoes down the spiral staircase. I entered the bedchamber and let out a sigh of relief, the tension draining from my shoulders. "I'm glad they have gone," I said, my voice tinged with both relief and lingering embarrassment. Ogleflow stood by a large wardrobe made from oak, its surface engraved with celestial maps that seemed to shift subtly, as if the stars carved into the wood were alive. He opened the door to reveal an astonishing array of garments. Robes spun from moonbeams that glowed with a soft silvery light, gowns that shimmered like morning dew on spider silk, tunics embroidered with phoenix feathers that seemed to flicker with inner fire, and cloaks that shifted color like the sky at dusk, from deep indigo to fiery crimson. Each outfit was tailored to my size, whispering suggestions of courage, grace, or mystery, their fabrics alive with a subtle magic. Racks gently rotated at the slightest touch, and a silver mirror reflected my most regal self, my reflection standing taller, more confident than I felt. "Would you like to try something on, young fun?" Ogleflow said, his voice warm with encouragement. I looked at Ogleflow with some suspicion, a flicker of doubt curling in my chest. He seemed different, like he was happy to be here, his usual restlessness replaced by a quiet contentment. Normally, he was all about the journey, eager to move on, his eyes always scanning the horizon. "What's wrong? Why are you happy to be here? Shouldn't we be moving on?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Ogleflow sat in a beautiful soft armchair situated by the window of the bedchamber, its cushions upholstered in velvet, the color of twilight. He sank into it, the moonlight spilling through the window bathing him in a silvery glow, and smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "This is your journey, young fun. I'm just along for the ride. This is a journey of thought, imaginings. A journey through your mind, your creations. We must pass through them all to reach what lies beneath, to find what you have lost," he said, his voice low and melodic, each word carrying the weight of truth. "And what have I lost?" I asked, frustration bubbling up, my hands clenching at my sides. "We won't know until we find it, young fun," he said with a smile, his eyes gleaming with a knowing light that both comforted and infuriated me. "Can't you just give me a straight answer for once?" I replied, my voice rising, the room suddenly feeling too small, too full of mysteries I couldn't grasp. "This is your journey, young fun. It's for you to discover. My job is to help you, not to do it for you. Everyone is on their own personal journey, and help is available to all if they only would ask. You asked, and I am here." His words were gentle but firm, like a river smoothing a stone over centuries. "I don't remember asking," I said, my brow furrowing, doubt gnawing at the edges of my mind. "You asked from your heart, young fun, not your head," he replied, his voice softening, his gaze steady and unwavering. I couldn't grasp that concept at the time, but he was right in truth. I had a longing for something better, for answers to my questions, a strong desire to find another way, and he came to help me find my way. The realization settled over me like a quiet snowfall, both comforting and unsettling, stirring a deep ache in my chest for something I couldn't name. I couldn't help but feel something was wrong here, that there was some secret that everyone knew except me, and that's not a good feeling to have. I looked at everyone with suspicion, my eyes searching for the slightest glimpse of treachery, my heart pounding with the weight of unspoken truths. The castle, for all its beauty, felt like a gilded cage, its perfection too flawless, its warmth too calculated. I felt uneasy, on edge, my skin prickling as if expecting a sudden blow. I preferred it when the danger was right in front of me. Frightening though it was, at least I could see it head on, could brace myself against it. This felt like something was just going to jump out at me at any moment and scare me to death. A shadow lurking just beyond my sight. I chose something comfortable to wear, nothing too extravagant, smart but simple, a tunic of soft green linen with subtle silver embroidery, and a cloak of deep blue that felt like a shield against the world. The fabric was cool against my skin, grounding me in the midst of my swirling thoughts. I looked at myself in the mirror and was surprised to see what was reflected there. A young, handsome boy, or should I say man, stared back, his eyes bright with a mix of fear and determination. The image was clean and smart, not the disheveled, scruffy boy I was used to seeing, his hair matted and his clothes patched. This reflection stood taller, his shoulders squared, as if the castle's magic had polished away the rough edges of my former self. Ogleflow appeared behind me, his reflection a riot of colour in the mirror, his presence both reassuring and maddening. "Are you ready, young fun?" he asked, his voice warm but tinged with a challenge. I looked up at him and smiled, a spark of resolve igniting within me. "I'm ready," I said, the words feeling heavier than I expected, like a vow I hadn't meant to make. There were 3 loud knocks on the bedchamber door, each one resounding like a drumbeat in the quiet room. A man entered, dressed all in scarlet, his tunic and breeches vivid against the muted tones of the chamber, except for his cloak, that was black, its folds swallowing the light like a void. His face was sharp and angular, his eyes keen as a hawk's, and he carried himself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I am here to escort you to the dining hall," he said, his voice clipped but not unkind, gesturing toward the door with a gloved hand. We followed him down the spiral staircase, the stone steps spiraling into shadow, the air growing cooler as we descended. We passed through the royal hall, its grandeur even more striking in the flickering torchlight, and through towering golden doors that seemed to hum with latent power. The dining hall beyond was illuminated by floating chandeliers that drifted like fireflies in a twilight sky, their crystals casting prisms of light across the room. The long banquet table stretched nearly the entire length of the hall, carved from a single ancient tree, its surface shimmering faintly with enchanted patterns that shifted subtly when you weren't looking directly at them, like ripples on a hidden pond. Silken banners in deep sapphire and gold draped from the vaulted ceilings, each bearing the crest of the realm. A phoenix rising from a spiral of stars, its feathers woven in threads that seemed to glow with inner fire. The scent of roasted fruits and spiced meats danced in the air, mingling with floral perfumes and the faint trace of magic, a heady blend that made my head spin. We were guided to our seats next to the king and queen, the chairs cushioned with velvet and carved with delicate vines. I looked down the table and was amazed at the platters of fine delicacies, jewel-toned pomegranate tarts that hummed with warmth, their surfaces dusted with sugar that sparkled like frost. Moonberry glazed venison, its aroma rich and savory, the meat glistening under the chandelier light, and fresh bread that steamed gently even in the cool castle air, its crust golden and crisp. Minstrels played soft, lilting melodies on instruments of crystal and wood, their notes weaving through the air like threads of silver, while dancers with wings like butterflies, gossamer and iridescent, wove between the guests in slow spiraling movements, their silken robes trailing like wisps of cloud. Then the king rose with a raised goblet carved from pure crystal, its facets catching the light in a cascade of rainbows. His voice boomed, resonant and warm, filling the hall like a tide. Tonight we feast not only in celebration, but in recognition, for among us sits one whose story is only just beginning. All eyes turned to me, not with expectation, but with encouragement, as if the entire court was waiting to see what I would do, their gazes warm and hopeful, like sunlight breaking through a storm. My cheeks burned, the heat rising to my face as I struggled to find words. I sat red-faced, my heart pounding, and managed to say thank you, my voice small but steady, echoing faintly in the vast hall. "Let's eat," the king roared, his voice a thunderclap of joy, and the hall erupted in laughter and the clink of goblets. The guests took their places at the table and tucked into the delicious food laid before us, the air filled with the murmur of voices and the soft clatter of silverware. Servants stood behind us, silent and attentive, their movements graceful as they refilled goblets with wine that shimmered like liquid rubies and offered platters of delicacies with quiet efficiency. I looked at Ogleflow, who sat beside me, his plate untouched, his eyes bright with amusement. Then it occurred to me, he never eats. The realization struck me like a cold wind, stirring a flicker of unease. "Why don't you eat?" I asked, my voice low, curiosity warring with suspicion. "Why do you eat, young fun?" he replied, his tone light but edged with challenge, his eyes glinting like polished stones. "Because if I don't eat, I will die," I said, my voice firm, the words grounded in the certainty of a child's logic. "Is that a fact or a belief, young fun?" he asked, his smirk widening, his cloak catching the light in a cascade of colors. "It's a fact," I said adamantly, my hands clenching under the table, frustration bubbling up. "It's a fact that you believe it, young fun," he said with a smirk, his words a riddle that twisted in my mind, elusive and maddening. I glared at Ogleflow, my temper flaring, but this was not the time or place for one of our fallouts. The king and queen were watching, their gazes warm but attentive, and the weight of their presence anchored me. So I went back to eating my food, but I found my appetite had diminished, the flavors muted, the food losing its appeal, the tart sweetness now sickening, the venison's richness too heavy. I pushed my plate away and sat back in my chair, a wave of weariness washing over me. I was tired of this, tired of the riddles, the grandeur, the unspoken expectations. This is what adults do, and I was bored, my heart aching for the simplicity of being just a boy. The king looked at the man standing off to his right, the one in crimson robes, and nodded. The man clapped his hands, the sound sharp and commanding, and the room fell silent, the air taut with anticipation. "Bring in the storyteller," he shouted, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. The doors to the dining hall opened, and in walked a man wearing sackcloth for clothes, the fabric rough and undyed, hanging loosely on his thin frame. Sandals adorned his feet, their leather worn and cracked, revealing toes dusted with the earth of countless roads. He reminded me of a monk, his face weathered and serene, his eyes deep with the wisdom of one who had seen the world's joys and sorrows. Carried under one arm was a large red book, its cover embossed with faded gold runes, about 5 inches thick, its weight bowing his shoulders slightly. Every step he took echoed around the great hall, the sound of his sandals against the marble floor sharp and deliberate, like the ticking of a clock. He made his way to the head of the table, his presence commanding despite his humble appearance, and stopped in front of me. He opened the book, its pages crackling faintly, releasing a faint scent of aged parchment and ink, and began to read in a voice that was both soft and commanding, each word painting a vivid picture. The castle on the hill was a happy place full of joy and laughter, where the sun always shined, its golden rays bathing the spires in a warm, eternal glow, and every face wore a smile, their eyes bright with hope. Life there was wonderful and complete, a tapestry of peace woven from centuries of harmony. The prince, son to our royal highnesses the king and queen, was betrothed to the princess of the land to the east, a beautiful garden full of life and wonder, where flowers bloomed in colors unseen by mortal eyes and rivers sang with the voices of ancient spirits. The day before the wedding was to take place, a creature entered the land to the east, its shadow creeping like a stain across the vibrant earth. With it came pain, bitterness, and jealousy, a poison that withered the flowers and silenced the rivers. It poisoned the land with its hatred and took the princess captive, locking her deep within the dungeon of that cursed land, its walls dripping with despair. The prince, son to our royal highnesses the king and queen, upon hearing the news, mounted his mighty steed, Thunderbolt, a stallion whose coat gleamed like polished obsidian and whose hooves struck sparks from the earth. Wearing full armor that shone like the sun, and his crown upon his head, a circlet of gold and emeralds, he charged from the castle toward the cursed land in the east, his heart aflame with love and duty. No one has seen or heard of the prince, son to our royal highnesses the king and queen, since that day. But rumors of a creature with the appearance of a frog, wearing the prince's crown, its emeralds glinting cruelly in its eyes, have travelled from the east to the ears of this castle. It is feared that the prince is no more, and the curse remains, a shadow that grows stronger with each passing day. But hope remains, for in a prophecy written down by our forefathers, it is said, "A young traveller shall fall from the sky and emerge from the forest of tall trees, their branches whispering secrets of old. Along with his companion of many colours shall he lift the curse and bring balance to the land once again." I looked at Ogleflow, my heart racing, the weight of the storyteller's words settling over me like a mantle. "Is he talking about us?" I whispered, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and awe. Ogleflow had a glint in his eye, a spark of mischief and certainty that told me they were, and that he was going to enjoy every minute of what was to come. I was pretty sure I was not, my stomach twisting with dread at the thought of facing a creature, even one that looked like a frog. The king rose from his seat, his presence commanding the hall, and lifted his goblet into the air, the crystal catching the light in a blaze of colour. "Cheer for our young hero, for tomorrow he becomes a knight of the realm, and sets forth to kill the creature, free the princess, and lift the curse from the land," he said, his voice a clarion call as everyone cheered and roared in agreement, their voices shaking the chandeliers above. I sat in disbelief as thoughts ran through my head at lightning speed, a storm of doubt and determination. They must have real knights, big, strong men with scars and swords as long as my arm. Why me? I'm just a 10-year-old boy, small and untested, my hands more accustomed to catching fireflies than wielding a blade. Surely it can't be that hard to kill a frog, can it? I can kill a frog. I will be a hero. I can do this. I can do this. The words became a mantra, a shield against the fear gnawing at my heart. The words became a mantra, a shield against the fear gnawing at my heart. I stood up, my legs trembling but my voice steady, and proclaimed, "I will restore order to this land." The words ringing out, surprising even myself with their strength. Ogleflow looked at me in complete surprise, his eyes wide, as the king and queen, along with all the guests, cheered for me over and over again, their voices a tidal wave of support that lifted me higher than I'd ever been. It made me feel strong and powerful, like I could do anything, my chest swelling with a pride I'd never known. I had never felt like this before, and I liked it. I felt 10 feet tall, as if the castle's magic had woven itself into my very bones. That night, back in the bedchamber, when the exuberance of the evening had worn off, I started to have doubts, the glow of the moment fading like embers in a dying fire. I had never killed anything before, not anything of significance anyway. Not a deer, not a rabbit, not even a fish. The thought of taking a life, even a cursed creature's, twisted my stomach into knots. I asked Ogleflow, my voice small in the vastness of the room, did I do the right thing? The question hung in the air, fragile as a spider's thread. "The path is set before us, young fun. We must navigate it as best we can," he replied, his voice calm and steady, a lighthouse in the storm of my doubts. "But what if I don't want to? What if I changed my mind?" I said solemnly, my heart heavy, the weight of my proclamation pressing down on me. "Is that what you want to do, young fun?" he replied in a quiet, soothing tone, his eyes searching mine, gentle but unyielding. "No. Oh, I don't know. Life was so much easier when I was just a boy," I said, my voice cracking, a wave of longing for simpler days crashing over me. Ogleflow laughed, the sound warm and rolling, as I flopped on the bed and buried my head in the pillows, the velvet soft against my cheek. I was tired and upset, my mind a tangle of fear and responsibility. Making decisions for yourself isn't as easy as I thought it would be, I realized, the weight of adulthood heavier than any armor. I must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I knew, I was being fussed over by the 4 beautiful maidens, their hands tugging me out of bed with gentle insistence, their laughter bright and relentless. They dragged me into the bath chamber, the amethyst pool steaming softly, its surface strewn with fresh petals. As an adult, well, let's just leave it there. But as a 10-year-old boy, I found this extremely annoying, my cheeks flushing with indignation as they giggled and splashed water at me. When I was bathed and dressed, the maidens' hands deft as they laced me into a fresh tunic. They left, their laughter echoing down the staircase. 2 soldiers entered the bedchamber, their armor clinking softly, their faces stern but not unkind. They were there to escort me to the throne room. I was to be knighted. Normally I would have rejoiced at being knighted, the thought of a sword tapping my shoulders thrilling, but I didn't feel like I deserved it. It seemed cheap, like being given an award for something I promised to do, not what I had actually done. The honor felt hollow, a shiny trinket masking the weight of what was to come. The throne room itself was a breathtaking spectacle. Soaring ceilings arched overhead, painted with celestial scenes of stars and angels, their wings glowing faintly as if lit from within. Walls of deep stone were adorned with rich crimson and royal blue tapestries, embroidered in gold thread with symbols of ancient victories, their threads shimmering like captured sunlight. Tall, narrow stained glass windows splashed the polished marble floor with dappled light in hues of ruby, emerald, and sapphire, the colors dancing like spirits across the stone. The king sat upon his great gilded throne, carved from dark oak and crowned with golden lions, their eyes glinting with inset topaz. His robes were of deep violet, trimmed in white ermine, the fur soft and regal. A jeweled crown sat regally atop his brow, its gems catching the light in a blaze of color. Beside him, the queen radiated warmth and grace, her gown a shimmering river of silver and lavender, flowing like water over her form, a delicate circlet of diamonds resting atop her braided hair, each gem sparkling like a captured star. The hall was hushed as I approached, every eye upon me, their gazes heavy with expectation and pride. Court musicians plucked softly at lutes, their melodies delicate as spider silk, and the scent of fresh rushes and lavender filled the air, grounding me in the moment. My heart pounded as I knelt before the king, the velvet of the ceremonial cushion soft beneath my knees, its surface embroidered with silver stars. All my thoughts of not being worthy of a knighthood completely left me as I lost myself in the majesty of the moment. I liked being the center of attention, the focus of every gaze, the heart of the room's quiet reverence. The weight of doubt lifted, replaced by a surge of pride that warmed me like sunlight. The king's sword, an ancient gleaming blade with intricate runes etched into its surface, their lines pulsing faintly with magic, was brought forth by a steward, his hands steady as he presented it. In a formal, time-honored motion, the king tapped it lightly on each of my shoulders, first the right, then the left. The metal was cool and heavy, the weight of honor settling into my very bones, a tangible promise of duty and courage. His voice, clear and commanding, declared me a knight, binding me to a life of loyalty, courage, and service, each word a vow etched into the air. When I rose, a cheer erupted through the throne room, the sound rolling like thunder, shaking the very walls. The courtiers clapped, their richly embroidered sleeves fluttering like butterfly wings, their jewels glinting in the light. Trumpets blared in triumph, their notes soaring to the heavens, and the queen smiled warmly, a silent approval that felt like a blessing, her eyes bright with quiet pride. It was a moment of pure transformation, stepping not just into a new title, but into a destiny, the weight of it both exhilarating and terrifying. A path stretching before me like a river of starlight. The celebration following the knighting ceremony was nothing short of magical, a whirlwind of joy that swept me up in its embrace. As the final notes of the trumpets faded, the throne room transformed into a grand hall of revelry, the air alive with laughter and music. Long oak tables, draped in white linen and embroidered with golden thread, appeared laden with a feast fit for 100 kings. Roasted boar with crisped apples, their skins glistening with honey, glistening pheasants, their feathers replaced by garnishes of fresh herbs, towers of sugared fruits that sparkled like jewels, and honey-drenched pastries shaped like stars and moons, their surfaces dusted with edible gold. Candlelight reflected from the polished suits of armor lining the walls, bathing everything in a warm, flickering glow that danced across the stone floor. Minstrels struck up lively tunes with lutes, harps, and drums, their melodies weaving through the air like golden ribbons, bright and infectious. Dancers in flowing silks twirled and leapt in intricate patterns across the stone floor, their movements joyous and bright, their robes catching the light in cascades of color. The king himself raised a goblet carved from pure crystal, his voice booming as he toasted to bravery, loyalty, and the spirit of adventure. His words ringing with pride and promise. The crowd echoed the toast, their goblets clinking like a chorus of bells, the sound bright and harmonious. I was ushered to a seat of honor at the king's right hand, the chair cushioned with velvet and carved with scenes of heroic deeds. I was plied with fine delicacies, slices of venison drizzled with moonberry glaze, tarts that melted on the tongue, and drink that tasted of summer orchards, and hearty congratulations from every side. Noble lords and ladies, dressed in their richest attire, velvets, brocades, and gleaming jewels that sparkled like stars, pressed forward to offer their blessings and admiration, their voices warm and sincere, their eyes bright with hope for my journey. Later, the festivities spilled out into the castle gardens, where the scent of night-blooming jasmine floated through the cool air, its fragrance rich and intoxicating. Lanterns hung from every tree, their flames flickering like tiny suns, casting intricate shadows across the manicured lawns. The stars above seemed to dance in rhythm with the music below, their light piercing the velvet sky, a celestial mirror to the revelry. That night was a timeless celebration, one that etched itself deep into my memory, a triumph of spirit, a joyful welcoming into a noble brotherhood, a moment where the world felt infinite and full of possibility. The royal gardens were a breathtaking dream under the starlit sky, a realm of enchantment woven from moonlight and magic. Manicured hedges shaped into fantastic beasts, griffins, dragons, and unicorns bordered winding, lantern-lit pathways, their leaves rustling softly in the breeze. Ancient willow trees draped their silver leaves over marble benches where courtiers rested, laughing and chatting softly, their voices blending with the night's gentle hum. Fountains carved with mythological figures trickled with crystal-clear water, their melodies blending with the music from the castle, a symphony of liquid and song. Roses, lilies, and night-blooming flowers released a rich perfume into the air, their scents weaving together in a heady embrace, and fireflies floated like tiny living lanterns, their glow pulsing softly in the darkness. Everywhere there was life, magic, and the deep contentment of a night meant to be remembered forever, a moment suspended in time, perfect and untouchable. As the night wore on and I became tired of the party, the laughter and music growing distant, I found myself a quiet spot in the garden where I could be alone. The air was cool against my skin, the scent of jasmine grounding me as I sat on a marble bench beneath a willow, its leaves swaying like a silver curtain. I looked at the moon and stars in wonder, their light cold and distant, yet impossibly beautiful, and I had to remind myself that none of this was real. It was a journey through my mind, though it felt real, every sensation vivid and sharp. The cool stone beneath my fingers, the perfume of the flowers, the weight of my new title. The fact that I could still think in separation from what I was experiencing made it hard for me to comprehend the truth. My mind caught between the dream and the reality, a boy lost in a world of his own making. Ogleflow sat next to me, his presence warm and familiar, and put his arm around me, his coat soft against my shoulders. I felt safe with Ogleflow, even though he annoyed me quite a bit, his riddles and laughter a constant thorn in my side. "Big day tomorrow, young fun," he said, his voice low and warm, tinged with a hint of anticipation. "Doesn't this all seem a little too perfect to you?" I asked, my voice soft, the unease from earlier creeping back, a shadow in the moonlight. "Let's see how you feel when we reach the swamp, young fun," he said with a smirk, his eyes glinting with mischief as if he could see the challenges ahead and relished them. I laughed, the sound surprising me, and said, "I need to sleep now," the weight of the day settling over me like a heavy cloak. We left the party, the music fading behind us, and made our way back to the bedchamber, the spiral staircase cool and quiet underfoot. I sank into the vast bed, the velvet quilts enveloping me, and had the best night's sleep I had ever had, my dreams filled with starlight and the echo of trumpets. The next morning, I found two soldiers waiting outside my bedchamber door, their armor gleaming faintly in the dawn light, their faces set with purpose. They had come to escort me to the armory. I was surprised, a flicker of unease stirring in my chest. I knew I had to go on this quest to kill the creature that looked like a frog, but how hard could it be? It's just a frog, I told myself, though the words felt hollow, a child's bravado against a growing dread. I still had a strong feeling that something wasn't right, that something remained hidden from view, a secret lurking just beyond my grasp. I had no choice. I had to see it through, the path before me as unyielding as the castle's stone walls. I looked at Ogleflow, his face bright with that infuriating Cheshire cat grin, his eyes sparkling with secrets. I know I have to see this through, but I can't help but feel that something is off. It just feels surreal, I said, my voice tight with frustration. The world around me was too perfect, too polished. You are wise beyond your years, young fun, he replied, his tone warm but cryptic, his words doing little to ease my unease. That doesn't help, I moaned, my shoulders slumping, the weight of his riddles pressing down on me. Ogleflow laughed, the sound rich and rolling, his coat catching the light in a cascade of color. His response told me that my feelings were correct, that something was hidden from view, or at least from my view, and I was pretty sure Ogleflow knew what it was, his knowledge a locked door I couldn't open. You know something, I said, my voice sharp, accusation lacing my words. I know a lot of things, young fun, he replied, his smirk widening, his eyes dancing with amusement. I felt one of my temper tantrums coming on, the heat rising in my chest, but this time I took a couple of deep breaths, the air cool and steadying, and calmed myself before replying. I thought you were supposed to help me and not laugh every time I stumble, I said, my voice quieter now, tinged with hurt. This is your journey, young fun. I am here to help you grow, to help you find what you have lost. There will be mountains to climb, rivers to cross. I am not here to do it for you. I am here to do it with you, he said, his voice gentle but firm, his words a reminder of his role as guide, not savior. I stood and thought for a while, the silence of the bedchamber wrapping around me. Maybe he did know something. Maybe it was something for me to discover. He was like an adult standing with his child, watching him try to complete a task. The adult knows how to do it, but if he steps in and takes control, the child will never learn. The realization settled over me, both comforting and daunting, a call to step into my own strength. I turned to the soldiers, my resolve hardening, and said, I am ready, let's go. My voice steady, the words a small act of courage. The armory was a vast vaulted chamber lined with polished stone and reinforced timber beams, exuding the subtle scent of oil, leather, and cold steel, a heady mix that stirred my blood. Gleaming suits of armor stood in solemn rows like silent sentinels, each representing a different era of knighthood. Some intricately engraved with family crests, their lines sharp and proud, others battle-worn and scarred, their surfaces telling stories of valor and sacrifice. Racks of swords, halberds, and lances hung along the walls, their blades reflecting torchlight in sharp gleams, their edges honed to a whisper of danger. Shields bore heraldic symbols in vibrant enamels, lions, eagles, and dragons, their colors vivid against the stone. Chainmail draped like silver cloth over wooden mannequins, its links glinting like fish scales, and a blacksmith's forge glowed gently in one corner, its embers pulsing with latent heat, ready to repair the tools of war or craft, mighty new ones. The air hummed with the energy of history, of warriors, champions, and legends long past, their spirits lingering in the steel and stone. This was a young boy's dream, a treasure trove of heroism and adventure. I didn't know where to look, my eyes darting from one marvel to another, my heart racing with excitement. I ran up and down, touching everything, my fingers brushing against the cool metal of a breastplate, the smooth wood of a lance, the supple leather of a scabbard. I wanted to feel, absorb it all, to let the armory's magic seep into my bones. Isn't this amazing? Real knight's weapons and armor, I shouted, my voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling, bright with wonder. I tried to pick up a huge axe, its blade broad and wickedly sharp, but Ogleflow quickly took it from my grasp, his hands steady and sure. It was too heavy for me anyway, its weight pulling me off balance, a reminder of my smallness in this world of giants. The king entered the armory, his presence filling the chamber like a storm, closely followed by the queen, her gown shimmering like a river of starlight, and an entourage of servants, their robes rustling softly. I was swept up in the passing wave of people, their energy pulling me along like a leaf in a current, and guided to the far end of the armory where a small dais stood bathed in torchlight. The king turned, his eyes warm but commanding, and I was pushed to the front of the pursuing crowd, my heart pounding as I faced him. "We had this made especially for you," he said, gesturing to a small suit of armor, its plates polished to a mirror-like sheen, a shield engraved with a single silver star, a spear with a haft of polished ash, and 2 daggers, their blades gleaming like slivers of moonlight. Suddenly, this all started to seem real, the weight of the quest crashing over me like a wave. It's easy to talk about something, to boast and proclaim, but when faced with the reality of your decisions, that's a whole new ballgame. 2 things bothered me straight away, their shadows looming large in my mind. 1, the prince was a grown man, strong and battle-hardened, and he never returned, his fate a mystery swallowed by the East. And 2, I had never killed anything in my life. Not a beast, not a bird, not even a bug with any intent. I wasn't sure I could do it, the thought of blood on my hands turning my stomach. I was in a daze as the king's servants helped me into my armor, their hands deft and practiced, the plates cold and heavy against my skin, restrictive in a way that made my breath catch. I looked at Ogleflow, his face calm, his expression supportive, his eyes steady with quiet faith. I wanted to talk to him in private, to spill my fears and doubts, not in front of everyone else, their gazes heavy with expectation. Events had taken control of my destiny, a river sweeping me along its current, and I felt powerless to stop what was happening. The time to back out had long passed, and now I had to ride this wave of energy, completely uncertain of the outcome, my heart a storm of fear and resolve. My thoughts returned to the bridge across the lava pit, a memory of fire and trust when I had to believe not only in myself, but that everything would work out fine. I had crossed that bridge, my feet steady despite the heat, and I could cross this one too. Trust me, thinking it and feeling it are 2 completely different things. I was afraid, my heart pounding like a war drum, my legs weak and trembling beneath the armor's weight. I found myself once again wishing I was back home with Auntie Em, her warm kitchen filled with the scent of boiled meat, a secluded but safe haven from the world. My old life, dull and lonely though it was, didn't seem so bad anymore, its simplicity a lost treasure. From the armory, I was led down to the stables by 2 soldiers, my armor clonking and clanking with every step, the sound echoing off the stone walls like a knight's march. The weight of the plates pressed against my shoulders, a constant reminder of the task ahead. The stables of the castle were nestled behind a high stone wall draped in ivy, its tendrils curling like delicate fingers, the stone cool and moss-flecked. Their wooden doors, stained dark with age and polished smooth by years of use, creaked softly as they opened. As I approached, the scent of hay, warm leather, and the earthy aroma of well-tended animals filled the air, grounding me in the moment. Inside, the stable was alive with gentle movement, hooves shifting on straw, the soft snorts of contented horses, and the creak of harnesses hanging neatly from pegs, their leather gleaming faintly in the light. The interior was warm, illuminated by shafts of sunlight streaming through high-arched windows, their beams piercing the dust motes that floated like tiny stars. Wooden beams crisscrossed the ceiling, thick and gnarled with age, their surfaces etched with the marks of countless hands. The floor was paved with smooth cobblestones, worn by generations of hooves, their surfaces gleaming softly. Each stall was lined with clean golden straw, its scent sweet and fresh, and polished brass nameplates gleamed on the oak dividers, each one engraved with the name of a horse in elegant script. The horses themselves were magnificent, their presence filling the stable with a quiet majesty. In the first stall stood a dapple grey destrier, tall and broad-shouldered, its mane braided with silver ribbon that caught the light in soft glints. This was clearly a warhorse, proud and alert, its eyes sharp and watchful, its muscles coiled beneath a sleek hide that shimmered like storm clouds. It stamped once, its breath curling in the air, a creature bred for battle and ceremony alike, its presence both thrilling and intimidating. Next was a coal-black mare named Naira, her coat shimmering like obsidian under the lantern light, each movement graceful, almost regal in her stillness. Her long lashes brushed her cheeks as she turned to nuzzle a young stable hand with familiarity, her dark eyes warm and knowing. She wore a bridle adorned with tiny bells and stones, tokens from a noble who adored her, their surfaces glinting faintly as they swayed. In the far stall, a chestnut stallion called Emberwind tossed his head restlessly, his copper mane flowing like liquid fire. He was younger, more spirited, with a streak of white running down his nose like a comet's tail. He pawed the ground, eager for open fields and the thrill of a gallop, his energy crackling in the air. His saddle, resting just beyond his reach, was decorated with embossed fire symbols, clearly a steed meant for a knight who rode fast and hard, its leather polished to a glossy sheen. At the back of the stables was a tack room, filled with the scent of oiled leather and beeswax, a warm, comforting aroma that soothed my nerves. Saddles rested on carved wooden racks, each designed for a specific horse, their surfaces tooled with intricate patterns. Rows of polished bits, stirrups, and gilded reins hung in perfect order, their metal gleaming like captured sunlight. A suit of riding armor sat in the corner, lightweight, flexible, built for speed rather than combat, its plates engraved with swirling vines. And beyond the stalls, through a small archway, was the paddock, a lush green field enclosed by a white fence, where several younger foals ran freely, their coats gleaming in the sun, kicking up tufts of grass as they chased each other in playful circles, their whinnies bright and joyous. I looked at the horses in wonderment, my heart caught between love and fear. They were beautiful, their power and grace awe-inspiring, but their size and strength made me feel small, a boy dwarfed by giants. At the far end, near the open doors leading to the paddock, stood the stable master, a tall, weathered man with hands like worn leather and eyes as sharp as a falcon's, their gaze piercing yet kind. He turned slowly as I approached, brushing a few strands of straw from his woolen tunic, its fabric faded but sturdy. His hair was silver at the temples, tied back in a rough tail, and his beard was neatly trimmed, streaked with grey, framing a face etched with the lines of a life well lived. A thick apron of dark brown hide wrapped around his waist, its pockets bulging with brushes, hoof-picks, and small tools, each one worn from use. Every movement he made was deliberate, as though every gesture was built on a lifetime of knowing exactly what horses needed before they asked for it. "Ah, you must be the one they knighted yesterday," he said, his voice deep and smooth, like warm syrup poured over stone, carrying a warmth that put me at ease. I heard the trumpets from the hayloft. Welcome to the heart of the castle, the stables. Name's Halric. He reached out a strong, calloused hand for a shake, his grip firm but not overbearing, his palm rough with the memory of countless reigns. A golden ring in the shape of a horse's head sat on his thumb, worn but polished by time, a token of his bond with the creatures he cared for. Around his neck hung a whistle carved from horn, its surface smooth and pale, and as he spoke, horses nearby neighed softly, a sign of deep familiarity and trust, their voices a quiet chorus of affection. He turned to stroke the nose of Nira, the black mare, who leaned into his touch like an old friend, her eyes half closing in contentment. "You'll not find truer companions than these," Halric said, nodding to the rows of majestic horses, his voice filled with quiet pride. "Each one bred and trained under my care. They'll carry you across mountains and into battle, through rain and festival, but only if they trust you." He gestured toward Emberwind, the fiery chestnut stallion, whose eyes gleamed with untamed spirit. "That one there? Spirited as a dragon's breath. Give him your heart, and he'll give you the wind." Halric then offered me a small bundle, Inside was a soft leather bridle, finely crafted and tooled with patterns of stars, its leather supple and warm in my hands. "Yours," he said simply, his eyes crinkling with a smile. "A gift." He stepped aside and motioned for me to walk the paddock with him, his boots crunching softly on the grass as he explained the lineage of the steeds, the meaning behind their names, and the particular quirks of each horse, like a proud father recounting the lives of his children. His voice was a steady rhythm, weaving stories of Naira's gentle wisdom, Emberwind's reckless courage, and the dapple grey's unyielding loyalty. I was enthralled, my fear of what was to come fading in the warmth of his tales, my heart swelling with admiration for these noble creatures. "Remember this," he said finally, stopping beside the fence and watching a foal kick at the grass, its coat gleaming like burnished gold. "A sword may defend a kingdom, but a horse carries its heart." I liked Halric. I liked him a lot. He was what I thought a grandfather would be like, strong but gentle, all-knowing with a quiet confidence that only comes from living a long life, seen it all, done it all. His presence was calm, soothing the jagged edges of my fear. Halric gave a low chuckle, the kind that seemed to rise from deep in his chest, like thunder rolling over distant hills, warm and resonant. "I reckon you're looking for a steed worthy of a noble rider," he said with a sideways glance at me, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "But for you, I have something special." With a twinkle in his eye and mischief tugging at the corners of his weathered mouth, he turned toward the far side of the stables, where a smaller, darker stall stood partially in shadow, its edges softened by the morning light. The warm, earthy scent of hay grew stronger as he strode across the packed dirt floor, his boots thudding gently, a steady rhythm that calmed my racing heart. "Come along now," he said, his voice softer, almost reverent as he reached the gate. "Let's not keep our guest waiting." From the stall emerged a donkey, not just any donkey. This one had a coat as soft and grey as storm clouds at dusk, shaggy and unbrushed, but with a certain stubborn charm that made my heart lift. His ears were tall and twitchy, one bent slightly at the tip, as if in perpetual thought, giving him a whimsical air. His dark, curious eyes seemed to measure me with unexpected intelligence, their depths warm and knowing, and his hooves made the smallest clip-clop sounds as he stepped into the light, each step deliberate and unhurried. Halric rested a hand proudly on the donkey's broad back, his fingers sinking into the soft fur. "This here is Thistle, finest donkey this side of the kingdom. Don't let the ears fool you. He's got the heart of a lion and the patience of a saint. Carried my supplies through a flood once. Didn't budge when wolves circled us in the North Forest, and he once stared down a knight's charger until the beast backed off. True story." Thistle blinked slowly and gave a loud, braying snort that echoed off the stable walls like a drawn-out laugh. The sound so unexpected that my eyes went wide with amazement and delight, a grin spreading across my face. "For young legs and open hearts," Halric said, lowering a padded leather blanket across Thistle's back, its edges tooled with simple, sturdy patterns. "This fellow's the perfect fit. Knows every trail by scent and memory. He'll carry you true, just don't offer him apples after sunset, makes him gassy." He winked, his face creasing with humor, and handed me a short set of reins made of finely plaited cord, their texture smooth and reassuring in my hands. Thistle gave a quiet, gentle hee-haw, as if to seal the partnership with a wordless promise, his breath warm against my hand as he nudged me softly. Ogleflow lifted me onto Thistle's back, his hands steady and strong, and took him by the head, his fingers gentle but firm. Halric pushed open the stable doors, the wood creaking softly, and we stepped out onto the street, the morning air cool and sharp against my face. "Good luck, young man," Halric said as I looked back, his voice warm with quiet faith, his figure framed by the stable's open doors. Once again, the streets were lined with people, their faces solemn, their eyes heavy with unspoken fears. But no flowers this time, no cheers or rejoicing. Just an eerie silence as we passed by, the quiet pressing against me like a physical weight. You could hear the clanking of my armor, each plate shifting with my movements, and the clicking of Thistle's hooves against the cobbled path, the sounds echoing off the buildings, sharp and lonely in the stillness. People bowed their heads as we passed, their movements slow and reverent, their cloaks rustling softly. I felt like this was my funeral, that they knew my life was over, their silence a requiem for a boy sent to face a monster. My fears had returned, a cold tide rising in my chest, my breath shallow and quick. I felt anxious, my hands tightening on the reins, the leather biting into my palms. I even looked at Ogleflow with some suspicion, his cheerful grin now seeming like a mask hiding truths I couldn't see. He knew something, and he wasn't telling me. His silence a wall between us. My armor was heavy and uncomfortable, the plates chafing against my skin, the weight pulling at my shoulders. I felt hot and agitated, sweat beading on my brow, the air thick with the scent of stone and dust. I could not wait to leave the castle, its beauty now oppressive, its walls closing in around me. I didn't care about kings and queens, their smiles too perfect, their words too grand. I didn't care about the quest, its glory fading in the face of my fear. I almost said I wanted to be alone, the words rising to my lips, but I remembered what happened last time I wished that. The bridge, the lava, the terror. And so I bit my lip and kept quiet, the taste of blood sharp on my tongue. Eventually we reached the castle gates, their iron surfaces cold and unyielding, the vines etched into them seeming to tighten as we approached. They slammed shut behind us, the sound a deafening clang that echoed in my chest, and I felt relieved, the tension draining from my shoulders like water from a cracked cup. Somehow, that place just didn't seem right, like a facade covering the truth, its perfection a lie, hiding something darker, something I couldn't yet see.